If you work in water treatment, do you know why in most cases your competitors always sell reverse osmosis systems instead of microfiltration? If you want to know this answer and many others at a technical commercial level, I invite you first of all to click below and subscribe to the Onnwater YouTube channel, and also click on the bell so you receive a notification when videos like this come out. Let's move on. What I just asked is a question that actually seems technical, but in reality it's not at all, because it's more of a commercial question. In fact, it's actually a question that almost touches on a company's business model. Try to imagine a very simple scene. There are structured companies with dozens, sometimes hundreds of agents, people who go house to house every day, do demonstrations, inspections, enter kitchens, talk to families, and often find the classic Mrs. Maria, right? As they say in Italy. And now let's stop for a moment. How is one of these salespeople paid in these structures? Obviously on commission, so they have a fixed salary that isn't very high, but they earn based on what they sell. And here's where the real point comes in. In your opinion, for this type of agent, this type of salesperson, is it more interesting to sell a 500 euro system, a very simple reverse osmosis, maybe combined with a 1,000 euro dispenser, or to sell a total system, a complete reverse osmosis system, for 2,000, 2,500, or 3,000 euros, if not even 4,000 in some cases? The answer is quite obvious, because if an agent takes, for example, 20% commission on 1,500 euros, they earn 300 euros. On 3,000 euros, they earn 600. The same time, the same visit, the same effort, but they've obtained double the profit. So do you see what happens? It happens that in many cases you don't sell what would actually be right for the customer, but you sell what is most convenient for the person selling. And this is where a big difference arises between two worlds that, from my point of view, are completely different. On one hand, we have the consultant. On the other hand, we have the salesperson. And mind you, it's not a criticism against those who sell. On the contrary, they have my full respect. But it's an important distinction that must be made, is correct to make, because the salesperson often has a clear goal, which is to close the sale, close the contract, and take the commission. The consultant, on the other hand, has a different goal: to understand the customer, understand their problems, and then provide the best solution to solve them. And this completely changes everything. Because when you enter someone's home and start talking about water, you're not selling just any object. Anyway, you're entering, if you think about it, the daily lives of people, of families. You're talking about what they drink, what they use for cooking, and what they give to their children. So it's something sensitive, something delicate. And so the real question becomes, what is the right solution for this person? The question shouldn't be, which product will make me the most money? And this is where the difference between a reverse osmosis system and a microfiltration system comes in. Because reverse osmosis is a very valid technology. So mind you, it's not bad, quite the opposite. But the truth is that it's not always necessary, it's not always the best choice, and it's not always the right answer to every question. A serious consultant, therefore, never starts with the type of product or filtration, but must start with questions, must ask questions to understand the customer, understand what the water in the area is like, what the customer's habits are, how much water they drink, what type they drink, if they use it for cooking, if they have special needs, and so on and so forth, okay? And above all, they must really understand what the actual, real, ultimate goal is, what the end customer truly wants to achieve, okay? Because sometimes they want to improve the taste, sometimes they want to eliminate odors or at least reduce odors, other times they simply want to have a sense of peace of mind, a sense of mental serenity for their family, okay? Sometimes they simply want practicality. But only after understanding all this does it make sense to propose one solution over another. And sometimes that solution will be reverse osmosis, but other times not. It could be microfiltration, ultrafiltration, okay? So this is where an interesting change happens, because when you choose not to always push the most expensive product, in the short term, obviously, it happens that economically you or your agents earn less. It's true, because maybe you close a sale worth 1,500 euros instead of 3,000 euros, we agree. So the commission is obviously lower. But, and this is a big but, in the long run, everything actually changes for you, because that customer didn't perceive you as someone interested in the commission, but truly interested in the customer, and so you've established trust. The customer trusts you, and so you haven't just made a sale, but you've done much more, because you've created a real relationship, okay? And what does a relationship generate? It generates what in this sector is something extremely powerful, okay? Namely word of mouth advertising, and you know very well what I'm talking about. A word of mouth that is sincere, a word of mouth that is true, precisely because the customer trusted you, okay? So when a person, true word of mouth is when one person tells another person, recommends you because they feel you've truly helped them and they don't feel like you've just snatched an invoice or a receipt from them, okay? And so at that point, your journey begins to no longer compete on price in this market because you're no longer competing on the product, on the materials, on the technologies, but you're playing another game, the game of trust. And today, trust, especially in this online world, is your best weapon. Okay? Because a satisfied customer, as you well know, is not just a customer, but in reality is a multiplier. They bring you other customers who bring you other customers who open other doors for you, who build your reputation, etc., etc., etc. And those things there, all these benefits cannot be bought, okay? You have to build them over time, day after day, sale after sale, choice after choice. And so let's go back then to the initial question. Why do many of your competitors continue to push reverse osmosis no matter what happens? Not because it's always the best choice, but because it's the most profitable choice in the short term. And this creates a market where sales and consulting are often confused, where you find the pot or mattress salesmen who disguise themselves, put on a robe and become water salesmen, okay? But you can actually choose to be on the other side. You can choose to be different. You can choose to do a simple thing that, however, by now seems to have become very rare, which is to truly and genuinely put the customer at the center. Not with words, but with facts, okay? So asking questions, listening to the customer, understanding the customer, only then proposing the solution that truly makes sense for them, not the one that makes sense for you, the one that makes sense for them. Even if this means earning less in the short term, because in reality you are building your future for tomorrow. And in the end, it's precisely this that makes the difference, not the product you sell, the system you sell, but the reason why you sell it, what drives you to sell this type of products. Because if your goal is to sell, that is, if that's your only goal, only what makes you get up in the morning, where you're interested in the commission, the fees, and that's it, okay, that becomes increasingly difficult to sustain because you'll become one of many, okay? Because that's the reason for many, okay? Obviously, money is important, we all agree. But if your goal instead is to solve the customer's problems in a genuine way, then you become someone people remember and people trust. And when you get there, you no longer need to chase customers or go knocking on doors or go into restaurants, because it will be the customers who, with this trust, will come to you. So this video comes to an end, and I hope it has opened a new window of thought for you, has changed your perspective for the better. If you want to see more videos on this topic, increasingly advanced, with more and more techniques, ever more in depth, I invite you to click the subscribe button below so you can subscribe to the Onnwater YouTube channel, and also click on the bell icon so you'll be among the first to see these videos when they're released, because you'll automatically receive a notification. See you in the next video.